The process server found me in my recovery chair, burned bandages still weeping through gauze, 6 counts of arson across 3 Arizona counties, $2.3 million in damages. Witnesses described a man with my exact scars wearing my stolen turnout jacket. I turned to photo 17. The surveillance image showed burn scarring on the suspect's neck. The scar hooked right, mine hooks left. Someone built a copy of my wounds and wore them like a costume. If you're still with me, please subscribe and drop your location in the comments. It means everything. My name is Murray Kephart, 54 years old. 22 years with the Phoenix Fire Department, 8 of those as a certified fire investigator before I transferred back to suppression because I missed the action. I held NFPA 921 certification in accelerant analysis, origin and cause determination, burn pattern interpretation. I could read a fire scene the way some men read a book. I married Marlene when I was 26. She was a school librarian with a laugh that carried across rooms. We had 2 kids, Kristen, my daughter, now 28, and working as a veterinary technician in Tucson, Jake, my son, 25, an Army sergeant stationed at Fort Bliss. Good kids, solid. The marriage didn't end with screaming. It ended with silence. 20 years of empty chairs at dinner and phone calls that started with, "I'll be late again," until the chair weighed more than the ring. 3 years ago, I didn't fight it. I figured she deserved someone who'd actually show up. Then, the warehouse fire happened. February, an industrial building in South Phoenix. Improperly stored solvents and cleaning agents that turned a routine call into something we weren't prepared for. The floor collapsed and dropped me into a chemical storage area. 3rd-degree burns across my left side, neck, hand, shoulder. 6 weeks in a medically induced coma. 4 months of skin grafts at Phoenix Memorial. I was learning to hold a fork again. During recovery, I'd sit in my apartment and stare at the half-finished USS Constitution on my nightstand, a wooden ship model I'd started before the fire. Couldn't grip the tiny pieces. My left hand was a mess of grafted skin that shook when I tried to close it around anything smaller than a coffee cup. So I sat and planned. Each plank placement, each rigging line, each piece of the hull. The nurses thought I was zoned out on medication. I was building. 11 completed ship models lined my shelves. Tall ships, clipper ships, warships from the age of sail. Each one represented hundreds of hours of work. My hands had always been steady, good at small things. Then the complaint arrived, and the man who'd spent 2 decades running into burning buildings discovered someone was using fire to destroy him. Passive innocence wasn't going to save me. I knew that the way I knew fire. You either fight it, or it consumes everything. The parts I didn't witness, I reconstructed from court filings, police reports, and what investigators found in Cliff's workshop. Cliff Renner, 47 years old, former theatrical makeup artist out of Los Angeles. 2 sealed fraud convictions in California, both involving identity theft through prosthetic disguises. He'd been good at his craft. Fired from 3 film productions for personality problems before he discovered his skills paid better in crime. He found Marlene at a grief support group, not because he needed support, because people in pain don't ask hard questions. Cliff recognized her maiden name from a local news article about my warehouse fire. Hospitalized firefighter, distinctive burn scars, grieving ex-wife. He saw his next project. He married her within 8 months, moved them into a Scottsdale ranch house bought with laundered money, attended a Station 7 open house as Marlene's guest, shook hands with my former colleagues, admired the equipment, and walked out with my old turnout jacket from an unlocked gear locker. Then the phone calls started, spoofed from my number, threatening messages to Marlene that she believed were from me because the caller ID said so. Murray was unstable, dangerous, obsessed. Cliff fed her this story for months, and she had no reason to doubt it because the calls came from my phone and the voice was close enough in the dark hours when fear does the rest. Meanwhile, in his converted garage, Cliff went to work. Silicone prosthetic burn scars sculpted from photographs of my injuries, color matched to skin tone, textured to mimic healed tissue. He'd spent years reshaping faces for film. Now, he was reshaping mine onto his own neck. He set 6 fires across Maricopa, Pinal, and Yavapai counties, 3 jurisdictions. A spread designed to fragment the investigation so no single agency saw the full pattern. At each site, he wore my turnout jacket with my name stenciled on the back and his handmade scars glued to his skin. Marlene filed for a restraining order. Separately, Sharon Whitley, an aggressive civil litigator who specialized in arson liability cases, built the 89-page complaint on Cliff's manufactured evidence. 2 legal actions, both based on fabricated proof, both closing around me from different directions. Marlene wasn't malicious. She was terrified, and that's what made the frame airtight. Her fear was real. Cliff had made sure of it. Sharon Whitley pushed for summary judgment in Maricopa County Superior Court. She told reporters my burn unit alibi was convenient. The local news loved the angle. Firefighter turned arsonist. The irony wrote its own headlines. My disability benefits were frozen pending investigation. 22 years of service, a near-fatal injury in the line of duty, and the system that owed me a pension was participating in my destruction. Former colleagues at Station 7 stopped meeting my eyes. Not all of them, but enough. The Brotherhood goes quiet when one of its own is accused of setting the fires they swore to fight. Dr. Anand Mehta, my burn surgeon at Phoenix Memorial, produced records proving I was sedated, intubated, or in active post-surgical recovery during every single arson date. Hourly vitals, sedation logs, wound progression photographs. The man documented everything with the precision of someone who understood that medical records are legal documents. The judge didn't dismiss. Whitley argued the records could have been falsified. An intubated man in a medically induced coma, somehow driving across 3 counties setting fires with hands that couldn't hold a spoon. The judge set a hearing date. Kristen still came every Sunday. My daughter brought groceries and sat with me while I worked on puzzles to rebuild fine motor control. One afternoon, she mentioned a barbecue at Marlene and Cliff's house. He showed me his movie makeup stuff, she said. These old kits in glass cases. Some of them are from the 1920s. He knows all this history about theatrical makeup. I nodded and changed the subject, but something cold moved through me. Movie makeup, glass cases. A man who married my ex-wife and collected tools for changing faces. That night, I called Diana Ochoa, 44 years old, former Phoenix firefighter who blew out her knee on a warehouse call and put herself through law school defending first responders. Her office was a converted bungalow near downtown with her old engine company photo on the desk. I described the case. She was quiet for a long time. "Stop being a patient," she said. "Start being an investigator." I looked at the USS Constitution on my nightstand, a warship built to fight. I picked up the phone and said, "Tell me where to start." Lieutenant Ray Fuentes, my former partner at Station 7, showed up at Diana's office carrying a gym bag. 49 years old, stocky, career firefighter who'd covered my shifts since the warehouse fire. Inside the bag were copies of fire investigation case files from all 6 arson sites. "This could end my career," he said, setting the bag on Diana's desk. "I know." He looked at me. "Your career's already been burned. Somebody's got to fight for it." Diana spread the photos across her desk. I studied them the way I'd studied 1,000 fire scenes. Origin points, accelerant patterns, char depth, V-pattern geometry. It took me 20 minutes to see what the assigned investigators missed. Every pore pattern was geometrically precise. Textbook placement. The kind of patterns you draw on a whiteboard during training. But real arsonists don't work this way. In the field, you learn that textbook placement doesn't account for airflow, structural load, or material variation. These patterns were too clean. 2. Studied. Whoever set these fires researched fire starting. They never investigated one. Diana pulled out photo 17 and set it under her desk magnifier. The surveillance image of the arsonist, my turnout jacket, my build, my burn scars. She adjusted the focus. Then she went still. Murray, come look at this. I leaned over. The scar on the suspect's neck curved in a hook pattern on the right side. Now look at yours, she said. I'd seen it the day the complaint arrived, but I was still on heavy painkillers then, shaking hands, blurred vision. I couldn't trust my own eyes. Under magnification, 6 weeks later and clear-headed, there was no question. The scar hooks right in the photo. Mine hooks left. A prosthetic made from photographs produces a mirror image. Kristen's voice came back to me. His movie makeup stuff. Glass cases. History about theatrical makeup. Diana was already ahead of me. Her investigator had pulled Cliff Renner's background. 2 fraud cases in California, both with sealed dispositions. The docket entries showed identity theft charges, but the outcomes and details were locked down. Diana filed 2 motions that afternoon, one to unseal Cliff's California convictions, one to compel discovery of the original fire investigation files. The sealed records, once opened, would transform Cliff Renner from a supportive husband into a serial identity criminal with a documented pattern. The motions took 6 weeks to process. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Maricopa County Superior Court. Fluorescent lights, an institutional carpet, and the low hum of a building that processes human wreckage on a schedule. Diana stood. Your Honor, I'd like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit A, hourly vital signs from Phoenix Memorial Burn Unit. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The records covered arson dates 1 through 3, sedation logs, intubation records, heart rate monitoring at 15-minute intervals, surgical reports covering dates 4 and 5, post-operative photographs from date 6 showing my left hand immobilized in a compression garment. Sharon Whitley objected twice. The judge overruled both. Diana moved to the telecommunications forensics. Exhibit BVOIP hardware purchase records. A consultant had traced Cliff's spoofed phone calls to equipment purchased under a false name but shipped to a Scottsdale address linked to Cliff through utility records, purchase dates, serial numbers, call logs matching every threatening message Marlene received. Then my fire investigation analysis. Diana walked the judge through the evidence photos while reading my technical assessment. The V patterns at all 6 sites show no char gradients, she said. That indicates poured accelerant, not pooled. The ignition points are at structural weak spots that any fire science textbook identifies, but that experienced investigators know are suboptimal for sustained combustion. These fires were set by someone who studied a manual, not someone who spent 8 years in the field. Whitley's pen had stopped moving. Diana turned to the projector screen. She put up 2 images side by side. On the left, a photograph of my neck taken that morning. The burn scar hooking left, the texture of healed skin grafts under harsh light. On the right, photo 17, the surveillance image. The scar hooking right. The courtroom went quiet, the kind of quiet that means people understand. A prosthetic replica made from photographs produces a mirror image, Diana said. The defendant's actual scarring curves left. The surveillance image curves right. Someone manufactured a copy of Mr. Kephart's burn injuries and wore them. Diana's investigator testified next. Cliff Renner's converted garage workshop. Silicone molds. Spirit gum. Reference photographs of my burn scarring printed from news articles. And my stolen turnout jacket hanging on a hook, my name still stenciled on the back. I watched Sharon Whitley's face change, the color draining as she processed what had happened to her. Cliff had built her case on manufactured evidence, fed her a client whose terror was genuine but whose husband created every reason for it. Whitley stood. Your Honor, plaintiff's counsel withdraws opposition to the defense motion. The judge looked past her to the gallery. Cliff sat in the second row, open-collared shirt, combed hair, the practiced composure of a man who always had a line ready. He had nothing. The judge dismissed the civil complaint with prejudice, meaning it could never be refiled. In the same breath, she referred the case to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Cliff made it as far as the courthouse corridor. 2 deputies approached him from opposite ends of the hall. I stood 30 feet away and watched. He looked at me once. The calculation behind his eyes found nothing to work with. I gave him the same expression I'd give a fire scene. Clinical interest. They cuffed him. His blazer wrinkled at the shoulders as they pulled his arms back. His voice cracked when he spoke, and what came out wasn't the smooth performer. It was something thinner, meaner. "You're nothing. You're a burned-up nobody." The deputies didn't respond. Nobody did. The line sounded rehearsed. Even his threats were performances. The search warrant covered the whole property. 40-plus vintage theatrical makeup kits in glass display cases. Visitors had admired them for years. Charming collectibles. Behind the locked garage door, medical-grade silicone, sculpting tools, spirit gum, and prosthetic burn scar replicas color-matched to human skin. Reference photographs of my injuries printed from online news coverage. And my turnout jacket, the one I'd worn into fires to save lives, hanging from a nail. Federal prosecutors took over under interstate fraud statutes. The multi-county scope qualified. Cliff's 2 sealed California convictions were entered into evidence, establishing a documented pattern of identity theft through prosthetic disguises. Purchase records traced the phone spoofing equipment to one of Cliff's false identities. Marlene was outside the courthouse when they brought him out. I didn't hear what anyone said to her. I didn't need to. She stood on the sidewalk with her hand over her mouth and a look I recognized. The look of someone discovering that the ground they trusted was hollow. She hadn't been malicious. She'd been the second victim. A woman who went to a grief support group looking for stability and found a predator who married her for access to my scars. Her fear had been real. Cliff made sure of that because real fear makes real witnesses, and real witnesses make airtight cases. Sharon Whitley left the courthouse without speaking to reporters. I heard later she withdrew from arson liability work entirely. Cliff faced federal charges: arson, identity theft, fraud, evidence fabrication. The man who believed he was the smartest person in every room discovered that a firefighter with burned hands and a magnifying glass took apart his work one detail at a time. If you're still with me, hit like and tell me, how would you rate my revenge from 1 to 10, and why? 6 months later, benefits restored with back pay, name cleared in department records. The Phoenix Fire Department issued a formal statement of support that I read once and put in a drawer. I sat at my work table on a Thursday morning, proper lighting angled across the USS Constitution's half-finished hull. I picked up a number 4 rigging piece between my right thumb and forefinger, held it steady. My left hand, scarred and stiff, braced the hull while I threaded the line through a block no bigger than a grain of rice. The hands worked, not like before, but they worked. Kristen came Sundays now. She'd bring takeout and sit across from me while I worked, talking about her patients at the clinic, the pit bull mix she was fostering. Normal things. No careful silences. No tight shoulders. Jake, my son, called from Fort Bliss every Wednesday at 1900. Short calls. The kind of talk 2 men who understand rank and order don't need to stretch. He told me once that he was proud of how I handled it. I said, I just followed the evidence. He said, that's what I mean. Marlene sent a letter, not an apology, an acknowledgement. She understood now what had been done to both of us. I read it at the kitchen table, set it in a drawer beside the department statement, and went back to the ship. Diana Ochoa framed the dismissal order on her office wall, right beside her old engine company photo. 2 careers, 1 purpose. Ray Fuentes bought me a beer at Station 7. We sat at the long table in the common room and nobody mentioned the case. The Brotherhood doesn't need to talk about what it already knows. I don't think about Cliff Renner. The federal case will do what federal cases do. 8 counts, no bond. That's his story now, not mine. The USS Constitution is coming together, plank by plank, rigging line by rigging line. I work on it most mornings before physical therapy, and some evenings after dinner when the apartment is quiet and the light is good. This morning I stood in the bathroom and looked at my scar in the mirror. Left side, hooking left. I went back to work.